Hello everybody. This demo video is going to cover some important concepts related to compositing images or combining images in various ways with a kind of emphasis on juxtaposing and overlapping. So we're going to cover a number of things such as how to make selections or how to select part of an image, how to then isolate it, how to move it, duplicate it, and manipulate it. And then we're going to talk about clipping masks as a wonderful technique to fill a shape with some sort of texture or color. All of these are really valuable for what we'll be doing while we're in Italy. So let's jump into the Procreate app here. And let's begin with bringing some images in to fill some layers so that we can start manipulating and doing all that stuff. So remember, we go up to the wrench icon, which is the Actions menu. We'll go Insert a Photo. And then I've got a number of kind of an album here that I created with images to use for these demos. So you see I have some marble, some other stuff that's kind of related to our travels perhaps. And I'm going to choose this image here. So here it is imported. I'll just make it a little smaller to kind of see the outside of it. And remember, I'll tap off on the move tool there. And if we go up to our layers menu at the top right, just remember that it's created filled layer number 1 with this image. And if I want to bring in now another photo, such as, let's go back to the insert a photo. Let's go back to my album here. So here's a little close-up of a sailing ship. It's part of a nautical map. And I'm going to bring that in. So now that one's dropped in here. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And tap off on that blue move tool. And let's go back to the layers palette really quick. And you can see it's just added the ship as a new layer. I didn't have to go in and create a new layer first. It just did it. So that's good. We've got 2 separate layers now. So right now I've got 2 images. I've got actually the bottom image is a big bin of gelato, probably chocolate ice cream there. So already I've juxtaposed 2 images here. I've got the gelato and I've got a sailing ship and part of a map here. And you know, I could, I suppose, make some sort of image, start adding other images. I've brought into some kind of relationship now the ship and the gelato, but I'm not really thrilled with the fact that the ship is sort of, you know, within this rectangular shape with a little bit of the map showing. To me, that area of the map, I'm interested in the ship, but that area of the map, that rectangle of sort of yellowish tan color, to me is not adding anything. And so I would prefer to be able to select just that ship and have that sort of overlapping and interacting with the photograph of the gelato underneath. So let's bring this up to a little bit larger size and talk about how to do that. So there's a few techniques for making a selection. First, let's tap off that. Let's talk about how a couple ways you could do that. So remember, the selection is on the top left here, that S looking ribbon. I assume that's for selection. So if we tap on that, I'm going to show you 2 techniques. And sometimes you have to use them both together. So the quicker one, supposedly, is automatic. On the top, the left here, if you look at the bottom, if you tap on automatic, and then you take your Apple Pencil there and you touch it to the sort of section of the map and slide it to the right slowly. You can see it's, as I slide it to the right, it's selecting more and more. I don't know if you can see that. I'm going to keep slide it back to the left and back to the right. So the idea here is that it's made a selection, and if I go ahead and go up to the eraser at the top right, tap that, and start erasing, pretty cool. You can see that it allowed me to erase a good bit of that surrounding material, but you can see there's a lot left. I'll go up to let's get out of that selection. I'll go up to the inserted image there. That's our sailing ship. Let's get rid of the underlying layer so you can see, not get rid of it, hide it. You can see how much of the map is still there. Quite a lot of debris or noise kind of left around, and the sections, these lines on the map, and this upper left section is still there. I can easily get rid of that by using my eraser and maybe bringing it down in size a little bit and just going through and getting rid of those. And as I make sure I don't usually leave any stray dots around. This would work pretty well. And then as I get closer, I can zoom up, bring my eraser size even further down. And if you look at the top here, I can just begin more carefully erasing everything that I need to erase. So that's one option. It works fairly well, depending on what kind of image you're trying to select and what the background looks like. A few different things could vary there. So I'm going to tap with 2 fingers and just go back a ways, bring us back to, there's our selection, and now we're back to kind of where we were, starting point here. So the other way to select this ship is to do it basically by drawing an outline around it. So we tap the selection tool again. Let's go to switch it to freehand, and I'll zoom in even more. And I'm going around the outer edge here. And you can stop and take your pencil off and bring it back, keep going. Here's where I have to decide if I want the water included with the ship or just the ship. And I guess just to move things along, I'll choose just the ship. Okay, so you get the idea. And the slower, more careful you are, the more exact, precise your outline will be. And when you get to the end, make sure you tap the dot. And this is what it will look like when there's an active selection. These diagonal lines will be showing you basically the stuff that's masked off or protected now. So we only can work on the ship. Okay, so here is my selection. Zoom it in so you can see that the ship is selected. It does not have the diagonal lines going across it. And if you want to make adjustments, you can, but be careful. You have to touch the selection button there with the pencil and kind of hold it for a minute. And then at the bottom, your options will pop up again. So on the left, you'll notice you can add. That's the blue now, it's selected. So if I wanted to add to this selection, I could start inside here. If you look at the front of the ship on the left here, and I can add a selection there. I could also, probably don't want to do that, I'll show you how to remove a selection. Get back there, bring up our options again. Let's hit remove. And I could go in and maybe if you look at the front lower sail, I could come in here and find a section that I wanted to carve out to be more invisible. Now that part is selected. I'll do the same thing towards the top here and remove this sort of shape. So now those parts will be transparent. And I think I'm going to do a couple more, but we'll jump ahead in time. Okay, so I've selected a few more small sections here. Now I'm going to hit at the bottom, invert. So now, in a sense, the ship, or all the parts of the ship that I want to keep, is now protected. And I can come up and select my eraser, Make sure it's pretty large. And now just start erasing that layer, and you can see the ship is protected. So make sure I get rid of all the other parts of that layer. And now I don't have any of that noise around. So I'll tap off selection, and there's my ship. You can see I could make it even a little neater. I'll show you how. So let's just make sure the ship is still selected. I could zoom in now. You can see it's pretty pixelated. And still with my eraser, I can come in making it much smaller. I could come in, let's see, yep, it's pretty small. If you look at the right side here on that red flag at the back of the ship, just come in and further fine tune my selection if I want to, depending on how precise. I want it to look messy, but you can see I can fiddle with this a bit. So there we go, a kind of combination of some different tools and different approaches to clean up this image. Okay, I have cleaned up the ship a bit here, and now I want to show you some options. Let's move it around and manipulate it a bit. So if we go to the Move tool, it's actually called the Transform tool, because it does more than just move. Now we have our selection. We can obviously move the ship around. If you look at the options at the bottom here, we can flip it around to face the other direction. That's flipping it horizontally. We can flip it back. Obviously, we can flip it vertically, but I don't want that. And then you have a few other options that are less important here. But let's talk about, we could also resize it. Let's see what it looks like. That size is pretty good. I'm okay with that for the moment. There we go. So also, let's go up to the sort of manipulation options here on the upper left. The little magic wand here is the adjustment icon. So we have a number of things we can do. Let's start with some simple things. Pretty much leave it at hue, saturation, and brightness. And so down at the bottom here, I could change the color, change the saturation or the brightness. Make it dark, make an entire silhouette, make it lighter. So at the moment, I don't need to do any of those things. But what if I wanted to create kind of a more like a fleet of ships sailing around? I could go up here and just copy this layer. So again, sliding it to the left brings up these options, and you just hit duplicate. And you might say, well, where's the ship? Well, you have to go up to the Move tool and then pull off the copy from the original. So let's do one more, duplicate, and now that's going to be our third ship. So thinking about maybe a fleet, kind of making some sort of composition, if we go through, make that one smaller, and let's see if we can change its color. Let's make it something kind of bluer. Yeah, that's pretty good. And what if we went up to the Layers menu here, and again, touch that in. And right below, we've got the first option here is opacity. And I think you can still see the ship there behind it, and you can lower the opacity. I'm going to put it down a little bit to say 75-ish. Okay. So now I'm going to choose this middle ship, and so I have to go to the Layers palette, choose that one, and I'm going to manipulate that a bit. So I'm going to change its color. Let's make it kind of have an orange there, and I'll drop, no, I'll leave the rest of it there, and then we'll go to the adjustments, the Transform tool, rather. I'll make that one a little bit smaller. And back at the menu, the Layers menu here, tap the in, and I'll bring the opacity down a little bit to sort of 80. It's not really going to make that much of a difference visually, I guess. Now, though, I think I'm going to create a a little bit of overlapping here. And so you notice right now, this orange ship, let's call it the middle one, where it's located, it's above the red ship, or the one on the left. So if I go up to the Move tool and overlap it with the red ship, you'll see which one's on top, right? The orange ship is sort of overlapping the other one, and that looks a bit awkward. So if I go to the Layers menu, and I'll simply take the orange ship, hold down on that, and drop it underneath the layer of the red ship, you can see now the red ship is on top or overlapping the orange ship. So because the overlapping gets a little bit busy there, I think I'll just go and maybe not overlap it so much. Maybe put that one there. Go back and choose that smallest ship. I'm not going to overlap them, so I'm not concerned about moving it. And we'll put that one sort of off in the distance there. All right, so that showed us some options on overlapping now. So now we have some richer imagery with these ships overlapping this sort of sea of gelato. So let's say a word now about saving our work. And we don't have too many layers right now, but things can get busy. So one way of preserving your images is simply to go back to on the upper left, tap Gallery. Okay, on the left there is our untitled artwork. We could give it a title, but for right now, I just want to show you on the top right, you could simply go to Select, tap the little circle under our current artwork, and then back on the top right now, we have the option to duplicate. So let's get out of that mode, and now I can tap and give this a new title. I could just say, perhaps, Ships 2. Okay, so let's title this one Ships 1. And now we kind of are aware that we've got copy here, copy 1, copy 2 of ships. Another thing I'd like to show you is how to use a clipping mask. So to make things easy, I'm going to go ahead and hide the 2 ships there and just work with one here, our red ship. So if I wanted to use the shape now, I've created this amazing shape of a sailing ship thanks to my selection tools. If I wanted to, instead of making it look just like a ship, I wanted to give it sort of a color or a texture. It's pretty easy to do. So first I need that color or that texture in the form of a photograph. There's other ways to do it, of course. But let me see if I can insert a photo here. So the upper left, I'll go to the albums that are keeping this stuff. So there's that kind of marbled pink color. I think that's kind of interesting. So I'm going to grab that. And here it is dropped in. So make it big enough to cover the ship. And actually, well, I can show you don't really need to cover it. You can just sort of overlap it here. All right, let's go look at our layers. So very interesting. You can see that the pink layer is on top of our red ship. That's where we want it to be. If it's not there, you need to move it there. And then you can just tap on that layer. And you have the number of options. I want you to select Clipping Mask. That basically, the little arrow now is pointing down. It means this red fabric is now clipped to the layer underneath, which is the shape of a ship. And so that's what it would look like. And now with the Move tool, I can move around that layer, that swatch of sort of pink material, until number one, I'm sure it's covering the ship, or I find the texture that I want. So let's say I go with that. Looks good. I'll tap off. And I still think I kind of like this pink ship, but it seems a little bit too light against that sea of gelato. So if I go in here and go to the adjustments. And again, hue, saturation, brightness. I'm going to make it a bit darker on the right here, slide that down. Of course, on the hue slider, I could always change the color a bit. I like it as that red-violet. And I could adjust the saturation if I need to. I could lower it or amp it up till it becomes really neon. Don't think there's any real need to do that. So there you go. There's another option there for how to manipulate images, how to overlap, and create some really interesting compositions. So the last thing I want to show you how to do is bring in an image or a file that's on a layer from one picture, one composition, into an entirely different canvas. So I'll go back to gallery here and see if there's some sort of an image here from one of my other compositions. I'll go down here. Here's some of the ships I was playing with again. Just check out the layers. You can see there's quite a lot more going on here. Much of it's kind of hidden. Let's see if I can find this ship. There it is, layer 1. Oh, that's the one over there. Let's go to the top one there. That's the one that I'm liking. And let's say this is the same ship, but it has all the water under it. So what if I want to try that option and bring that into my current ships 1 composition, see what that looks like. It's pretty cool. All you have to do is, with your finger, is hold down this. You need 2 hands here. So with one hand, hold down that file, that layer, until you can drag it out into space here. Then while you're still holding it with your finger, tap Gallery on the top left. Wait a second. Scroll down there. Here's our ships 1. Let's open that. Now all I have to do is just let my hand go, and it's dropping in and importing. And here's our new image, the ship with the water. And just to remind you, you could tap up to the layers menu, and there it is as the layer on top now, the newest layer. I hope you can use this information and practice it a bit on our next assignment.